This presentation, titled Virtual Auditing, ICT Tools and Cybersecurity, comes to us from Shauna Wilson. Shauna has worked in quality for more than 30 years and holds an exemplar global principal QMS auditor certification. Her research into virtual team communication and development of virtual auditing methods, as well as her auditing experience, has made Shauna the leading expert in remote auditing. She earned a master's degree in engineering, focused on organizational performance technologies and instructional design. Shauna wrote interteaming.com, tools to create high-performance remote teams, and co-authored e-auditing fundamentals, virtual communication, and remote auditing. Shauna has been featured in Quality Progress, The Auditor Online, and ASTD's Info Line. She served as the U.S. expert for PC Tag 302 for the ISO 19011-2018 Auditing Management Systems Guideline, and is currently serving as ASQ Portland Section Chair. And with that, take it away, Shauna.
Well, thank you, Mike, and thank you, everyone. Well, what an exciting time for auditing, yes? Well, here's what we're going to talk about today. One, we're going to define what information communication technology is, ICT. We're also going to discuss communication theory and applicable ICT tools. Then we'll go into describing an ICT tool audit trail, and then review virtual audit security measures, examine remote auditor preparedness, and then how to develop auditor capabilities to meet these things. Let's start out with definitions, so we're all on the same page. When we talk about virtual audits, it's the same as an audit, except it uses electronic means to carry out, to obtain the audit evidence. So when we look at an audit, we are looking for a process and a means to evaluate objectively the extent of the audit criteria. So we can judge if it's meeting conformance or not, right? So the e-audit or the virtual audit is just using electronic means to obtain that information or audit evidence. When we talk about remote audits, the difference between a remote audit and a virtual audit or virtual site is that the remote audit has facilitation of an assessment from a location. So there's a physical location that we're looking at. In a virtual site, there's not a remote location, it's virtual. So what is information and communication technology? So it's an umbrella term that includes all the technology used to handle information and aid in communication. It's really cool, very exciting. This includes computers, internet, the radio, we've been listening to radio for forever, television, and a fixed or cell phone, and also satellites. So there's a really broad field of technology that we use to pass information through. When we compare it to communication and communication theory is we have either asynchronous communication, which is past or delayed, so it'd be reading, and then we have the synchronous, which is real time, so you're getting information back and forth. So we have the delayed, and then we have the real time. And we use ICT tools in both of these arenas for our communication. So some of the examples in the delayed with asynchronous include online records or procedures and documents that we may have stored into a Dropbox or because that's part of the internet, right? Or into like a SharePoint or a collaborative website, blogs, podcasts, wikis, and all these kinds of different forms are also included into this as an IC tool, as well as email. But some of the more exciting things is in the synchronous, and this is where we look at 80% of our audit trail is asynchronous because we're looking at stagnant documents and blogs and wikis and all of that for audit evidence. But in the interviewing and the checking for evidence, we're looking into those more synchronous, real-time ICT tools, which include GoToMeeting or Zoom, collaborative programs. FaceTime would be another one. And then the really cool stuff is the wearable technology. So you can wear glasses, you can have cameras that do live broadcasts so that you can see what's going on at the remote location. Of course, the iPhone is one of the best mobile devices we have out there with the best camera to be able to see things and read things clearly. And it's the most accessible also for most people or auditors. So we're looking at a wide range of tools at our disposal now for auditing. So, going forward, this is what we want to do. We don't want to go back to face-to-face unless we need to, because there's so many options here for us with ICT tools. But let's talk a little bit about the cybersecurity measures in this as well, and how to protect our ICT tools that we're using. So the first rule is that when you can hook up to the internet through an internet cable, it's going to be safer than a Wi-Fi. But if you have password protections otherwise, that helps. And also if you join a public Wi-Fi, which like in a hotel or someplace like that, a VPN protection on your mobile device would help to secure your mobile device as well. That can go onto a tablet or computer, laptop. The other one is an internet security. And this is a firewall that you put into your system. So Microsoft provides one free with any of their, Windows 365 or anything like that. It's the Microsoft Defender firewall. So this is a good one to just get because it's there. And then there's the Nortons and all of those companies that will sell you the internet security firewall as well. You need to have one of these up. The antivirus that will scan your computer or your disk and your storage. The important aspect of this is, well, first to have one, but then also to keep it updated to ensure that you've got the latest and greatest protection for your systems. What some people don't realize is you can use several of these. In fact, what I have is I have the Norton 365. Not that I'm selling this, but I also use the Microsoft Defender. So you can bring more of those up and use those simultaneously. They may say, well, we can't do this because of this other thing, but I use it anyway. So have multiple protections and then you'll be safer that way. And then the collaborative program that you select, look for the end-to-end AES encryption in the website. So when you're choosing your collaborative programs like Zoom or GoToMeeting or WebEx or any of that, look to see if they encrypt their programs, because that adds a level of protection there as well. And I'll always do password protections in your audits to ensure that you secure the data that you're looking at from the client side. Okay, so this is the minimum security measures you should have on any of your devices that you're using. And look for the manufacturing requirement or recommendation for drones, for tablets, any of those things. Most of these things will work on a tablet as well. So let's move on from definitions to assessment. How are we to select the right ICT tool for the audit trail that we're on? So what I did is I drew out this supply chain. And auditors, I think this is a really good thing for us to do, is to draw out a supply chain of the trail that we're looking at. And so I had gone to a craft beer tour. And we have a lot of those in Oregon. We have these craft beer places, pubs everywhere. And went on this tour. this quality tour, and it was so interesting. And he was talking about his supply chain. So, you know, he looks to the farmers for hops, barley, and the different wheats and those kinds of things. And then it comes into the brewery, and then they bottle it, and then they distribute it, right? And so when I start thinking about, oh, wow, he says, you know, the hardest, one of the most critical parts about that is making sure those barleys are, or the hops are picked at the right time. And they would have to drive out there, and if, you know, it was their day with the drive to where the barley was being raised. And I said, well, what if you were to be able to have that virtually done, you know, with an iPhone or something? But a drone would be another tool that could be used also, right? Fly a drone over the hops and review the status of those. Well, why not, as auditors, could we not use the same kinds of tools for remote locations? And in fact, if we were to do an internal review of your whole system, like this brewery, we could use these kinds of tools, you know. So here's the different things that we might explore in this supply chain is the drone audits with the fields out there. And then at the brewery, we'll have the beer tasting, right? So we'll have some product tasting there. And then we'll have some, you know, testing for seals and the bottle seals, test results, and then the stocking. So we would go to just the different distribution centers or how they distribute the beer and make sure the stock is refreshed and that the aging isn't on the bottles. Right, so we could use an iPhone at the distribution area. We could use really an iPhone at the seal if we're not at that location, and a drone out there in the field. So here is an example of ICT tools that would broaden that audit scope. Right, instead of just being at the brewery, you would have this whole picture of the whole process that they're using. And how well their supply chain is working for them. Just really opens this up. So once you get your plan laid out, then here's the audit plan and ICT tools. So if you were to take a look at the audit type, you know, conformance and the different process controls, here are some of the mobile devices that you may have, and also the different kinds of ways to validate the product. We have the drone, we have the mobile device, and product testing, let's say. So for performance and looking at process controls, we'd use a mobile device at the brewery, remote locations. We would do product testing, you know, however, you know, either tasting it or having certifications done on the product itself. When we look at the performance, we can take a mobile device looking at the sealed bottles, the stock rotation, and then of course more beer tasting. And then over here with the supplier, which is the farmer, do the drone over there at the farmer location. If you're using a bottler to do the bottling for you, you can do a mobile device at that location and taking a look at the hop yields. That could be a product test again. So laying out your whole audit plan to incorporate the different tools, I think is a valued exercise, and then plan it for the year on the different areas that you're testing or auditing. So this is a really good opportunity and a very different way of looking at this, but add more tools to your audit trail. Use these kinds of tools, a flow, and then use an audit plan that incorporates the different tools that you have at your disposal. And you caught my drone going across the hops, right? Okay. All right, so here are some things about risk. So with the remote audit, here's a risk assessment that we need to take a look at. So here we have the potential failure mode, the potential effects of that failure, potential cause of that failure, and then the recommended action that I'm going to provide here. So if you have poor the first one would be the broadband performance. You have to have fast internet in all of this, to be able to do both voice and video. So the potential effect of a failure would be you can only go, your session's only going to be as fast as the slowest person's internet. That's the problem. It's kind of like driving behind the leading car, which is always going to be the slowest car. Right? So slow and unable to support the voice over IP, the video, the visual review of the manufacturing floor will be impacted. So it'll be blurry. You won't be able to see it at that remote location. So the cause would be the high-speed internet was not used, or they have intermittent service too. So that happens a lot. That can happen in different countries. So recommend using phone lines, kind of way and try to reduce the load that's on the bandwidth. So you can use phones and only have necessary cameras on. Not everybody has their camera on if they're not talking or if you're not looking at a location. Then you can turn the cameras off. The other part here is the collaborative program and the selecting of the right collaborative program for you. There's a couple areas here that we want to take a look at. One is that you want to make sure that the room isn't easily hacked so that uninvited people can come in and start viewing information that you may have, that you're viewing under NDA agreement. And that the collaborative room actually has the tools that you need to do the audit. Some of these that are free or that are used more for collaboration and showing and face, face to face with grandma or the grandkids or whatever. Some of these aren't used or are not applicable for auditing. You need to have the different tools for auditing, right? So some of the potential causes of this is the collaborative room, if it's hacked, may not be encrypted or passwords were not used. The protocols are not supported, so it's maybe shareware that you're using. Okay, so these are all things that could cause a room being hacked. So what you need to do is you need to define the tool set that's required for your auditing, use an encrypted collaborative program, and also use password protection, and keep your internet security firewall updated and make sure that you uploaded all the recent patches or anything like that they've sent to you. Right, technical difficulties. And the potential effect of this is having poor visibility of the objective evidence that you're auditing, or you may have poor sound quality. So again, this points to bandwidth issues, or even it will point to the configuration of aged computers and mobile devices that you have coming into the collaborative program. So, keeping that equipment up to date. Some of the iPhones or iPads or tablets, those types of things will be blurry if they're the older versions. And some of the mobile devices, they just don't have a clear camera on them. iPhones are the best. So technology checks should be used to check to determine where your Wi-Fi weaknesses are in a location, making sure that your equipment performance is working prior so that your mobile device is all loaded up and you can do that. It will work with the collaborative program that you've chosen, and that you don't have poor quality with that program as well. Okay. And then the last one is the network security, and that exposure to external records is the potential failure mode there. So if you don't have the internet security firewall software installed, or the updates are not up to date, that could be a real problem for you. So technology checks should be used to ensure the internet security is current. All right, so this is the auditor. So you're part of cybersecurity as well. So if you are auditing from your home, which most are, or a lot are because of the pandemic, and you've got other people around you and you're not wearing a headset, then protected NDA information can be overheard by other family members or friends. And that is, they're not under that agreement. So that's a conflict. Other things is the antivirus is not up to date, or you're lacking the firewall. And the encryption. Okay, screenshots are taken without permission. That could also be a violation of NDA protection. The other aspect of this is that the auditor does not delete emails and the different records that the people have sent earlier. That could be a problem if you don't continue to protect your computer, and if you were to be hacked, then that client's records could be vulnerable to the hacking that you have had on your computer. So it's all very important that the auditor understands their role in cybersecurity as well, that they ensure and protect the information that they're looking at, either real time or in the asynchronous realm as well. So auditors need to show up ready with headsets. Everything's been virus checked. Everything is looking good from that perspective. Have your opening meeting. You set expectations of how everybody returns on time. Talk about the screenshots if that's going to happen, and also tell them when you're going to. Because if we think about this in real life audits, they know when they give you a piece of paper because they're giving it to you. But if you're taking screenshots and they're showing that information, they may not know that you're keeping that information. So the auditor has to let the person know that they are taking screenshots. Use the floor diagram to ensure that you know where you are whenever they're using a mobile device at that location. And also use the pre-check checklist prior so that you know where the Wi-Fi may be less, or maybe there's an opportunity to get a booster out there in that area as well before the audit. Okay, so always dress professionally for your audits and ensure that nobody else can hear the information that's being said other than just you if you're working from home, and you cannot isolate yourself from your family. Okay, so there we are. So when we take a look at auditor capabilities, and I know that we've been in this pandemic for over a year now, and many of you have started this for the first time because of the pandemic. There still needs to be training and understanding by the auditor of many things with auditing virtually to ensure that you get the right information and that you conclude correctly with the audit results. First is, if we take a look at validating a virtual audit, we have the 4 areas. We have the requirements that we are looking at. So standards, specifications, drawings, documents. So these are the standards, the requirements. And then there needs to be the knowledge of the audit process. So like I talked about earlier, a virtual audit is like an e-audit. It's just looking for the audit evidence virtually rather than at the location. And so the audit process, how to do that, the 6 steps as defined by J.P. Russell in audits, the audit methods as far as how to do, using the floor plan, the floor diagram, those kinds of things for the virtual aspect. And also the reference to ISO 19011, the guidelines for auditing. So auditors have to have training in this process so that we can get the audit evidence the same way, because it's all a process. So these two things auditors need to have. Then the auditor needs to be competent in both the ISO standard and also have integrity. But also in this area, the auditor needs to be technically competent to run the collaborative program, as well as facilitate the virtual audit to a virtual team or as a virtual team. So understanding the different technology and the tools, the interactive tools, how to sync everything, to give technical advice and help people at that remote location, as well as selecting the right collaborative program with the right kinds of tools in it, are all part of the job of the auditor now. So these are all things that the auditor needs to be aware of. So the training, there's online training that's available here through JP Russell's website. It's self-paced, and if you need training with a group or with me, I am there. ASQ still has this handbook. It's been out of print this last year, but you can still go online and get that and get the online version, and it'll give you a lot of information if you're just beginning in this realm. Other than that, I want to thank you for listening, and if you have any, if you have questions, be sure to email me at admin@amazonconsulting.com for any questions you may have, or get with Mike. Here's the reference for this presentation today. And thank you again for watching.
And thank you, Shauna Wilson, for your perspective on virtual auditing, ICT tools, and cybersecurity. And that concludes this presentation.